Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Lake Washington School District Board of Directors February 7th, 2011 board meeting. And board members are present except for Ravi, who's excused for this evening. And I will entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. And we have our host school tonight, which is really not a school, but it's certainly our students from all over and it's PTSA Council who are here to share with us reflections, which is near and dear to my heart. Every time I see reflections come here, it always reminds me being in your chair many years ago and carrying a lot of these around from place to place. You get really good at schlepping stuff around. So welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Kimball and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Fang Ko, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the Reflections program. My other co-chair is Cindy Poon, Connie Walsworth, and Kelly Trace. Reflections is a national PTA art recognition program. It is an art competition program. Each year we have a theme for the students to work on. It challenges the students' creativity. It is designed to create and reflect the theme using their own ideas. The students can create in 6 art areas, which is literature, visual art, photography, music, dance, and film. This year's theme is Together We Can. The competition actually starts in schools in our district. We only have 2 schools that do not participate this year, mainly because they run out of time. And each school has a chairperson who will go back to the school and promotes the theme of the reflection program to the students. Some schools have more than 100 students who participated, and some schools might only have 20 students. We have a guideline for the judging system, and students who reflect the theme the most will be the one who win the award. This year, we have 600 students who got selected from their school competition and come to our council level. We had a reception on January 7th, and this building was packed with students and parents. We had excited winners who just found out that they won an award, and most of the students are just here to be proud that their work is being displayed. My own children who came here for like 6 years in a row, they're just excited to come here, winning or not. They just know that this event provide the best cookies. We had 3 types of awards that are given out. We had Outstanding Interpretation, Award of Excellence, and Award of Merit. The Outstanding Interpretation and the Award of Excellence are forwarded to the state reflections. They might be going through the judging system right now. And the Award of Merits are being displayed in the events like the school board meeting tonight and the Founders Day luncheon. Behind you are all the Award of Merit for the photography and visual arts that did not go to the state. I would like to thank you, all the local chairs, for doing such a good job promoting the program to the students. Thank you, all the parents, for encouraging and supporting their children to participate because of you believing that creating is very important to our children. And one way of creating is through art. And most of all, thank you, all the students who spend their free time after school creating on their project. So I will invite you to welcome our young artist that is going to perform for us tonight. And first will be Belle Penn. She is a 2nd grader from Alcott, and she has an outstanding interpretation in primary literature. Belle? Belle would like to say something about her inspiration for her piece.
Well, I went on a vacation to Maui before I wrote this, and I went to an ocean center, and I went there like 2 times that week, so I really liked that the place, and I learned a lot of stuff. And, well, and the staff liked me too. And when I came home, I wrote a story about what I learned and the animals that I liked best. Tiger Shark and the Oil Spill, a heroic story. Tiger Shark had a dream. He dreamed of a brown liquid that filled the ocean many miles away from his home, and lots of dead animals lined the shore. He watched horror-struck as more and more dead creatures covered in a brown sticky liquid were washed onto the shore. He tried to swim away, but the brown liquid covered him. It filled his eyes, and he couldn't see anything. Suddenly, he felt himself getting hit on the tail. Tiger Shark woke up with a start. It was White-Tip Reef Shark. He was patting Tiger Shark's tail, trying to wake him up. "Hello, time to wake up, sleepyhead. You were doing somersaults in your sleep. Did you have a bad dream?" "Oh, yeah," Tiger Shark murmured. "It was horrible. Anyways, time for breakfast." Tiger Shark ate his breakfast very quickly. On the way home, Tiger Shark saw a hawksbill turtle sleeping on the bottom of the ocean floor. It looked a teensy bit oily, which reminded Tiger Shark about the oily area he'd seen in his dream. So he swam over and gently tapped the hawksbill turtle on its shell. He told the hawksbill turtle about his dream. Hawksbill turtle said, "It's true, I came from that place. You probably need to bring someone with you if you're planning to go there. It's covered with deadly oil and they're struggling for their lives. They need help." Tiger Shark was determined to help. He said, "I am going." The turtle said, "Good, but you'll need to bring someone with you." Tiger Shark zoomed away to find his friends. He told all his friends what happened with the hawksbill turtle, including his three best friends, White-Tip Reef Shark, Sandbar Shark, and Gray Reef Shark. He hoped they would go with him, but they were all scared and refused to go. Tiger Shark had no other choices. His one and only choice was to go and ask his enemy, the most annoying fish in the 7 seas, Black-Tip Reef Shark. The conversation with Black-Tip Reef Shark was not going very well, as every conversation he had with Black-Tip Reef Shark never did. He explained to Black-Tip Reef Shark everything he had seen in his dream, how he stopped to talk to a hawksbill turtle, and the hawksbill turtle said that his dream was having true, and then he said dramatically, "I am going to save them." But then Tiger Shark said, "But the hawksbill turtle said I must find someone to go with me or it won't work." So I asked all the other sharks. They were all square. So I expect the very amazing Black-Tip Reef Shark to be brave enough. Black-Tip Reef Shark did a twist. "Of course," she squealed. "Who would think I wouldn't be brave enough to go with they?" Tiger Shark flinched at the sound of Black-Tip Reef Shark mentioning his friends were scared. And she smiled happily. "I'm coming," she said. And without another word, she was darting away with Tiger Shark right on her tail. They swam on and on. By the time the sun was starting to rise, they had already swam more than 50 miles. Yawn! They were so exhausted that they dropped off to sleep as soon as they found shelter. The same thing happened every day. It seemed as though they had traveled forever. None of them could remember when they had last seen home. Finally, after long, Tiger Shark saw land, except that there was a channel in the land. The channel was full of fresh water. Didn't care about that. Also, it had tons of people at it. "Okay, quickly, come with me," he said to her. He said to Black-Tip Reef Shark, "We will swim as low as possible and avoid anything in the water." Tiger Shark added, "Don't breathe in too much fresh water. It's not good for you." They managed to slip through the channel just in time, except that Tiger Shark couldn't see very clearly now. There was something clouding his eyeballs, making him unable to see very well. He swam on. He recognized the same boy he had seen in his dream. He suddenly realized he had a problem. Where would he take the sick animals? He knew this was a big problem. Tiger Shark could see the effect of the oil already. It was getting cloudy. The water was very cloudy. It was getting hard to breathe. He could see why that could be a problem. The animals would not be able to breathe. That was the first problem. Second problem, they would eat other animals that are covered in oil. And all the problems of the oil spill hit him very quickly. When he was swimming, he saw a creature. He immediately recognized it was a bird. It was a brown pelican. It was extremely brown as it was covered in oil. So he swam up to it. Hello, he said. Hello, said the bird. It was exhausted and covered in oil. Could you tell me anything about the problem that I have? I need to take animals that are covered in oil to somewhere they can survive better. If I take them to an oilless place in the ocean, they will make the oilless place oily. I've seen something that some people have made. Is a place underwater where they will care for these fish. I mean, I'll have to go on land to find someone to help me, said the brown pelican. I will give you a boost, answered Tiger Shark. The brown pelican tried as best as he could to grab onto Tiger Shark's tail as Tiger Shark swam rapidly to shore. As soon as Tiger Shark got to the shoreline, he said, let me give you a push. So he pushed the brown pelican onto the shore. Tiger Shark went looking for someone to help. He found a small dolphin that was covered in oil. He started to help pull it along. He asked the dolphin if he knew anything about something that people had set up in the ocean. It was a place that was constructed so people could help some of the oil-covered creatures. The dolphin started to say something, but oil drifted into his mouth, so he pointed with his tail vaguely into the distance. Tiger Shark started swimming towards that direction. He swam as fast as he could, and so pretty soon he was surprised to find himself in front of a stone building. There were people with large helmets on them wearing heavy boots in it, and there were glass windows. You could see more people with large helmets and heavy boots, cleaning off many animals. There was a big hole. Dolphin swam right into the hole. Tiger Shark peeked into the hole. There was a watery chamber with tons of people inside, taking animals out of the chamber and up a staircase, and disappearing along the staircase. Tiger Shark could not see what they did above the staircase. Then he peeked into one of the windows. He saw tons and tons of fish being cared for in every single room, and more people were helping. The fish were being cleaned and scrubbed and checked for infections. There were people from all over the world, all different colors of skin, black, brown, yellow, white, red, and tan. Tiger Shark could barely believe his eyes. He had never seen so many different kinds of people that looked so different. Later, he and Black-Tip Reef Shark found a green sea turtle, a Cancrelly turtle, and a hawksbill turtle. They tugged on the 3 different species of turtles clinging to them. It was the heaviest load Tiger Shark had ever carried in his life. Finally, when they got to the hawksbill, they sent the turtles through the hole and turned around, searching for more creatures to help. As they were swimming along, looking for someone that needed help, Black-Tip Reef Shark and Tiger Shark met a young turtle. It was very young after all, probably less than a year old because it wasn't even the size of a dinner plate. The turtle was a bit oily, but it was willing to help. After all, if you spend all day pulling oily fish to a hospital in the middle of an oily gulf, you probably would be oily too. They swam on without finding anyone, but they did find the site of bubbling oil. It was very cloudy there. The oil made it impossible to see. Tiger Shark could see only oil. It filled his eyes and he could not see. He opened his mouth to call for help, but oil clouded his mouth and made it impossible to say anything. Next thing he knew, he accidentally swallowed and oil was going down his system. A few minutes later, he couldn't see at all. He couldn't breathe. His organs stopped working, and Tiger Shark gave way to a dizzying blackness, sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Black-Tip Reef Shark and Green Sea Turtle had just realized that Tiger Shark had died. Black-Tip Reef Shark was extremely angry with herself about Tiger Shark's death because he had said to take care of each other. She turned to Green Sea Turtle and said, what's the point if no one helps us? Then we would barely be able to complete the mission, right? Just at that moment, a little horseshoe crab was nearby. It had heard all this commotion and seen it. He quickly crawled over until he was underneath Black-Tip Reef Shark. He shouted, hello, I have to tell you something. The horseshoe crab told Black-Tip Reef Shark his idea of carrying him so that he could clean off fish. When they agreed, the horseshoe crab told them, I need to do something. So Horseshoe Crab went on to prepare a small surprise for them as a way of saying, thank you for letting me join your group. He called his friends to come and help. So one day when Black-Tip Reef Shark and the small horseshoe crab and Green Sea Turtle were searching, Green Sea Turtle shouted, hey look, I see a bunch of horseshoe crabs up ahead. They are covered in oil and seem to want to help us. And so the horseshoe crabs helped and lots of fish wanted to help too. That was how come their crew was very large. They also took turns carrying the smallest horseshoe crab that happened to be the one that came in the first place and got all his friends over. Pretty soon the water was getting clearer. All the fish were safely in the hospital, taking refuge there until the oil in the Gulf was cleaned. The crew of sea creatures had worked together very well, but there was still oil in the Gulf, so they decided they would take refuge inside the hospital. So Blacktip reef shark, small green zero, and all the horseshoe crabs and other creatures found the animals left in the Gulf of Mexico that needed help. They had looked long enough and their goal had been completed. So Blacktip reef shark decided it was time to go home, and everybody who could change habitats followed her to her home in Hawaii. Every day there was this big commotion because every day Blacktip reef sharks, fellow sharks, kept asking her what happened at the oil spill, and they kept asking her what happened to Tiger Shark. But at least she knew that if there was another oil spill, she and her friends would be ready for it. Together they can. The end. Narrated on October 2nd and October 10th, 2010 by Bell Pan. Edited October 10th and October 16th to fit word limit. Recorded and transcribed by Daddy. Word count 1098. 2010-2011 Reflections Entry. Bell Pan, Grade 2, Louisa May Alcott.
Thank you, Belle. So,
I'm speechless. That was very well done.
well, we have a future in our reading program, I guess. So we have a second presenter is Samvit Jain, and he is a 10th grader from Redmond High School. He has an outstanding interpretation award in the senior literature program. Senior literature. Do you want here?
My piece is written from the perspective of a Vietnam veteran 2-3 years after the American withdrawal from South Vietnam. It attempts to capture the disillusionment many Vietnam veterans felt with what American society had in store for them. And it was inspired by an interview I conducted with Vietnam veteran Nicholas James Weber, who was a Chinook helicopter crew chief during the Vietnam War. We were given a silent homecoming. There were no celebrations, no parades, no parties, and certainly none of the gallant marching bands we had heard would greet returning veterans. My father and his buddies were celebrated and spoiled and pampered when they came back from Europe, but for us, it was different. Maybe it was because we had all served different one-year shifts in the armed forces and had returned home in small groups, if not alone. Maybe it was because there was nothing to be proud of. But still, why the contempt? Why the same silent hating look they gave all of us? Why the spitting image or the let's forget about them and move on talk? We too were part of the greatest generation and were at our prime during the 60s. 10 years of fighting and turmoil, and we were wasting away in the rehabilitation centers. Now we were just PTSD victim 1567, or the 5th suicide case in the newspaper. It's like we didn't exist anymore, didn't have a name or place in this country. So where had McNamara, Johnson, Kissinger, and all the other big politicians who had sent us there and kept us fighting gone? That administration, which had spilt our blood in a land 10,000 miles away, had now forgotten to recognize our service to this country. We were just the undesirable remnants of a lost cause, the unwanted reminders that Vietnam was still with us. As if just hoping could erase our memories of the dark and painful times we spent in those jungles. As if just hoping that we never saw Saigon fall, never heard the bombs level those rice fields or our companions torch the hut of an elderly woman could clear our consciences. We vets came home from horrors no American should ever have to deal with, and here was our reward. May 12, 1976. It's more than 3 years since our last troops came home. Today, the inflation and debt in our economy is constantly in the news, and the public is looking anxiously towards an uncertain future. There's a presidential election in 6 months. Oil prices are skyrocketing, and taxes are higher than ever before. On top of that, there are plenty of things in our personal lives to keep us occupied. Weddings, our children's education, an old neighbor who is moving. For everyday Americans, this is how life is. Vietnam is now truly part of the past. I guess life goes on, as it always has, for those who have not learned to value it. Why is it different for us? Why is that miserable 1 year we spent in Vietnam frozen time and trapped us there forever? I want to worry about stupid things again. I want my wife's words to comfort me, as they always did, and my children's happiness to enliven my soul. I want this damned wall that has cut me off from the world to fall, to get out from under the shadow of that horrid place. No moment I've spent with my family has been truly free of that shadow. The visions remain with me, as clear as they were when I actually lived them. When I lie in my bed and try to clear my mind, it's nighttime shift again. My senses are alert as I watch for movement in the bushes or any signs of hidden Viet Cong snipers. I tell myself 5 minutes of rest will not harm anyone and drift off to sleep, but when I wake up, I'm covered in a cold sweat. How foolish I am. 5 minutes and our camp could have been completely ambushed. I curse my carelessness, then realize where I am. There's no escape. In a Vietnam Veterans of America meeting in July, I got a chance to exchange a few words with the guys who had been in my regiment. None were necessary, however. I could see from their faces what they were going through and that I was not alone. But nothing could have prepared me for what they had to say. Of the 3 guys I talked to, 2 were struggling to get financial assistance from the government to pay for their therapy and medical relief costs. They told me, flat out, that they were depressed and had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. To be honest, I was shocked beyond belief. It had always been faceless names in the newspaper, all the stories of veterans being hospitalized and treated for extreme trauma and committing suicide behind the backs of their doctors. Stories are always just that, stories, until they come knocking on your own front door. I knew my friends were normal, real people, but the issues they faced today were not normal at all. And to think there was no one to support them. The public had turned their backs. Society had forsaken them after pointing out the way to the insane asylums and hospitals. Families did not understand their situations or what they were really going through, but we did. So it would have to be us, veterans, who would do something about it. I brought this issue up in our next meeting. My message was simple. We had to talk, to speak out, so that the pain of one became the burden of all and a much lighter load to carry. At first, there would be barriers that separated us, I admitted. Everything from family responsibilities to personal inhibitions. But with time, they would break down. Perhaps, I suggested, the solutions to our problems would turn out to be simple. The positive response that my monologue evoked frankly surprised me. After I'd finished, one man who had been stationed just outside of Saigon during the war suggested that we somehow capture the tumult and instability within us by memorializing it in some permanent medium. He suggested that we write poems and articles on the war, detailing our experiences and our opinions, and publish them in a journal on the behalf of our VVA chapter. The point that he raised was a powerful one. The feelings bottled up inside us deserved a wider audience than ourselves, and the bridge between us and society had to be made someday. Maybe questions about our identity and our place in this country would be answered by the poems that we composed. I think veterans are in serious need of a chance to speak out and inform fellow Americans about our feelings regarding that dark chapter in our history. In any case, writing would relieve some of the detrimental stress we have been dealing with. I thought about the idea over the next few weeks, and its appeal increased as time went on. I tried my hand at verse for the first time. I'd always been a poor writer, and was shocked at how easily the words came out. Within a week, I had written several compositions. I felt the greatest joy, however, when I heard the poems of my buddies and felt the similar themes and ideas that tied all our poetry together. That hot summer day, we christened ourselves the Poet Warriors. Our next few meetings were spent presenting our favorite works, critiquing and discussing, and finalizing our first anthology for publication. The spirit of comradeship we felt as we poured out our hearts in our writing, that feeling I will never forget. To this day, my favorite poem remains the simple, non-rhyming piece I scrawled on the margins of a book the first day I began writing. I entitled it Fugitive from Self. September 7th, 1976. Only last night, I had the horrific nightmare that I'd been deployed for a second term as a colonel in Vietnam and had been given the responsibility to lead one more of those hated search and destroy missions into the hilly country just south of the 17th parallel. Last night, I dreamt of all the bloodshed and suffering all over again and thought of what it would have felt like to be spat in the face and blamed for losing the war. How much worse could it be than the silent neglect that most of us dealt with every day? But now, nothing mattered. We had escaped from the shackles of our inhibitions and had realized that in spite of the deep divides running through this nation, Vietnam veterans were there for each other. We believed there would be a time when all the hard feelings and painful wounds inflicted during the war would heal, and America would be able to confront its past. And there would be a time when we veterans, marred physically and emotionally in the longest war in our history, would be able to stand together in peace, as we had in war. Together, we would overcome.
Thank you, Somvi. And next we'll have music performance by Alexandra Shield. She's a sixth grader from Rosa Park. She has an outstanding interpretation in the middle and junior music. And her friend Emma Clinton, also a sixth grader from Rosa Park, will be accompany her in flute. So, Alexandra and Emma. Alexandra would like a minute to talk about her inspiration for her piece.
What inspired me for my piece that I wrote was my music teacher, Mrs. Dean, because she first got me interested in music. And then it was my piano teacher, Mr. Wayne, who taught me to write music and how to and that's why I wrote it's for piano. And then my band teachers, Mr. Chapin and Mr. Peterson, because they taught me how to play flute, and that's why my piece is for piano and flute.
Thank you, Alexandra and Emma. Our last performer will be Wenyi Ao. She's also a sixth grader from Ben Rush. She had an award of merit in middle and junior music. And I think this young lady has some resemblance of my family members. So.
There are always some problems you can't solve alone, and the best way to solve them is using teamwork.
I hope you enjoy our performance by our young artists, and thank you.
Thank you very much, and both to the families and the students who performed. And every time we have reflections come and we hear the music and hear the writing and listen to all the creativity, it reminds me of why the arts are so important to be a part of what we do in our education of our kids. So I'm very glad that this district's able to maintain that in here. We have two quick proclamations to honor two groups of people in the district tonight, and then once that's done, we'll take a couple minutes so that families can go ahead and go home and get kids ready for bed and homework and all those good things for being ready for school tomorrow. But I thought you'd like to at least hear our proclamations so as we honor our two groups. And we have two people here with us this evening. And do you want to tell us who they are and why they're here, and then we'll read their proclamations to them? And
so Dan, why don't we'll start with Career and Technical Education. So Dan is the Director of Career and Technical Education. Why don't we start there?
Okay. This is our proclamation for our Career and Technical Education Month. On February 1st to the 28th of 2011 has been designated Career and Technical Education Month by the Association for Career and Technical Education. And whereas Career and Technical Education provides Americans with school-to-careers connection and is the backbone of a strong, well-educated workforce, which fosters productivity in business and industry and contributes to America's leadership in the international marketplace. And whereas Career and Technical Education gives high school students experience in practical, meaningful applications of skills, such as reading, writing, and mathematics, thus improving the quality of their education, motivating potential dropouts, and giving all students leadership opportunities in their fields and in their communities. And whereas Career and Technical Education offers individuals lifelong opportunities to learn new skills which provide them with career choices and potential satisfaction. And whereas the ever-increasing cooperative efforts of career and technical educators, business and industry stimulate the growth and vitality of our local economy and that of the entire nation by preparing graduates for career fields forecast to experience the largest and fastest growth in the next decade. And whereas Lake Washington School District has approximately 3,950 students participating in 81 different career and technical education course options taught by 56 career and technical education teachers. Therefore, the Board of Directors do hereby proclaim February 1 through 28, 2011 as Career and Technical Education Month in the Lake Washington School District.
And in the same division, Judy is here with us, and Judy is actually new to our district, kind of.
Not really, but
Kind of.
I came back.
Judy works closely with our counselors, and so we also have a proclamation the following week around counselors, and then we'd like to invite both of them to say something if they'd like.
Okay. And this proclamation is for our counselors. Whereas school counselors are employed in public schools to help students reach their full potential, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to career awareness and development, and whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children, and whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society, and whereas comprehensive developmental school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school. Therefore, the Board of Directors do hereby proclaim February 7th through February 11th, 2011 as National School Counseling Week in the Lake Washington School District.
Well, on behalf of the school counselors, we want to thank you for your recognition. They are a fabulous group and work so hard with so many wonderful such support from the council, plus so many different issues in this day and age. So I I tip my hat to them. I wish I got to work with them every single day, but I do spread my time between CTE and counselors, and I am very thrilled to accept this proclamation for the school counselors.
Great, thank you.
Well, all right, okay. On behalf of Curran Technical Education, we also are thrilled to receive this proclamation. Such a great program also. It's been my experience after being gone for 10 years to come back to CTE, how it's changed in such incredible and positive ways. And I have enjoyed working with all 56 of those teachers. It keeps you going, but it's a wonderful program, and it's great to be back in the school district. I thank you.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dan and Judy, for coming, and we certainly do recognize the really high-quality work that these folks are doing inside of our system on behalf of kids every day, and thank you for your leadership and for encouraging them and building skills and all the things you do every day. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for coming this evening. And now we'll go ahead and let our families, and you're certainly welcome to stay. This is not a shoo you out the door, but if you would like to leave, this is probably a good time that we'll let you go ahead and do that. And just take a minute here and then resume.
I was just waiting for whenever they said open forum.
That would have worked too.
Almost going to resume. I'll set the next section of the agenda as our public comment time, and I'd just like to let folks know what that's about. And I've got a couple people signed up here, and I think we're getting another gentleman signed up over there. Our public comment time is an opportunity for community and members to speak to the board, and we do have some guidelines for how that happens. And what we will ask you to do is to come forward to the center podium here in the middle. If you would announce your name and where you live. You don't have to give us your specific house address, but if you could tell us approximately where in the community that you live, that would be great. And we have 3 minutes that's allowed for each speaker. And we do have a timer that is kept for you, and it has a stop light configuration over here. Vanna helps me all the time, Chris. When it comes to yellow, that indicates you have about a minute left, and so should be wrapping up your remarks. And there also is a buzzer or a bell that rings at the very end, so when you hear that, that really is the time for you to please be finished. And I think that covers all the pieces. So I have Grayling Gentry. I'm going to have you come to right here. Right here. This way you can see us and we can see you.
First of all, thank you for pronouncing my name correctly.
Oh.
That's great. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm really here just by a fluke. The only reason I even found out about Rose Hill Junior High, planned to to go forward with a whole new campus was because I gazed out my window and saw on December 22nd the soil perk test being done. And otherwise, I would have heard nothing about it. And my understanding was that we're supposed to have 2 meetings for immediate and then larger area neighbors, but that didn't happen. So I'm hoping you guys can help me understand. Excuse me. I'm very nervous. First of all, I'd like to say that I have worked in education at Hewlett-Packard for 9 years, and after that I became an ISO-certified internal auditor, so I work as that now. And I'm kind of confounded by claims of overcrowding. The classroom size has dropped almost in half. Excuse me. Oh, so sorry, I was running out in the hall. Sorry, thank you, I'm so nervous. Told you I'd be nervous.
We're just regular old folk up here.
so
Just take a deep breath.
Oh, I
We're
used to
just,
call in sick on book report day since the childhood. So, from what my research shows, in 1997, when the plan to revise all these schools and do the remodel and renovation was made, Rose Hill's population at that time was 823 students, but today it's down to 438. So that made me go searching for data about what's happening with the numbers. So then I discovered that students are being bused in from Redmond Ridge. So that made me call the mayor's office, and I just couldn't understand any of this. It sounded crazy to me. So they said, well, the folks up on Redmond Ridge, the developers, only pay $4,070 per new home. And it would cost $20,000 minimum per child to build the schools needed to address the educational needs for those thousands and thousands of new homes that just keep going in. So that's not happening. And unfortunately, those kids now are having to be bused over 9 miles each way. And I called the real estate board, and the people that are selling those houses, those thousands of very expensive view homes up there, are unaware of your plans. So they actually have falsified info on their websites, and they're selling houses to people who still think their kids are going to attend local schools. So that's a problem, for me anyway. It sounds like a legal problem. So I got a hold of the plan, not because it was published anywhere, but because somebody met with somebody, and a neighbor made copies. And the whole neighborhood's pretty upset, because there's about, 40 or 50 homes that are going to have massive concrete structures right in their backyards. And this is the first we've heard. So I got together with people, and I got the plan, and it just still doesn't make any sense why you'd take out almost 4 acres of trees. That's a community use forest, and people come from far and wide to enjoy that. And on snow days, that whole hill that's going to be covered in concrete, that's the area's favorite sledding hill. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but it's a local treasure. It's 23 acres, and it's just beautiful. And I'm about to cry thinking about what you guys are going to do to it. I just can't believe it.
I'm going to have to ask you to wind up your remarks. We do have several other people speaking on the same issue, so hopefully they'll do some of your comments as well.
So I'd like to say Bill and Melinda Gates are currently funding to the tune of $1.8 billion, 1,000 U.S. schools. And you know what they do? They fund schools of 400 students only, because all of the last decade's research points to the problems created by these massive factory schools that the baby boomers needed. That's an outmoded, antiquated, and kind of dangerous school model. So I'd really like to ask you guys, could we get estimates redrawn? Can we get an outside independent auditor, somebody like me, who has no vested interest and no connection to the monies and Bassetti Architects? I heard $800,000 spent for the plans for these schools. It's just an outrageous amount to spend. It's $200 million, and $20 million of it for a new campus for a school that's got half the kids it did 10 years ago. I just don't understand. Thank you.
Well, I know we'll have some comments for all of you at the end, but thank you very much for coming.
Thanks.
Take a deep breath.
I know, I'm
You're
sorry.
okay.
I'm a terrible public speaker, but I did a lot of research for weeks and weeks, and I really am serious. There's some major problems with the way that class size and head count and student-to-teacher ratio, as well as floor plan and square footage, was calculated. I see inconsistencies, and as an auditor, there are so many red flags. I can't do otherwise than to try to find some help from outside. Because
Okay.
I don't think that your plan is justified, and I'm not even certain it's legal. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim Pearson. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here. I'm glad after we've waited an hour to talk with you, you are going to give us 3 minutes. So my name is Jim Pearson. I've been here living as a resident in Redmond for 15 years. My backyard is connected to Rose Hill Junior High on the east side. Okay. I have 5 concerns I want to bring up. The first one is my kids and I walk across the school just about every day on our way to various different places. And it wasn't until just last month that we started seeing orange stripes showing up on the trees. We haven't seen any sort of notification anywhere of what the plans are. Okay. I've been looking at your website today. Thanks, Grayling, very much for notifying the neighbors. We've seen nothing from you, the board here, as far as what your plans are. I know you probably published it somewhere, but we're not getting it. There's no public paper notice written out on the school that says what your plans are, not that I've seen. Okay? So communications, that's bullet number 1. I think legally you have to do some sort of RFC here to get some information from the public. I'd like to know when that was, who came to it, when it was published. Bullet number 2, trees being cut, as was mentioned. I won't talk about the trees in general, but the trees on the west, on the west fence line, you have a number of houses there, not my house, I'm on the east side. But those houses need some sort of privacy from the school. The trees directly in front of them are apparently being cut. They all have orange stripes on them, a number of really large trees. The drawings that you show on your website now show they show trees being there, but I don't know what that means. Are you cutting the existing trees down and then replacing them with smaller trees, and then we have to wait 10 or 15 years for those to grow? My third bullet, theater. Your drawing shows some sort of arts center on the site, but it's not real clear as far as is there going to be a theater or not. I think there's a rumor that there's not going to be a theater and the kids will be going back and forth to Lake Washington. I think that's ridiculous, especially after the speech we just heard about how arts are so important. Okay, I don't see that. I think that's hypocritical. The dollars spent, I was just about ready to approve do my own voting for the school levy. I'm thinking about not voting for it now or voting against it because I don't understand. Same thing we just talked about here. Why are you busing kids across town? I work 5 miles away and I ride my bike every day. Okay, I don't see the reason for us busing kids. If we have 400 kids at the school and you need 900 to make it worthwhile, why are we busing them in? Why are we not building out the additional schoolrooms where the kids live? That's important. Having the parents come, to across town to see where their kids are. That leads me into the 5th bullet, which is parking. When I look at the design that you actually have less parking than you have today. Okay. Today we already have parking on the street outside of the school. And when there's a facility, some sort of function, that street up and down not Old Redmond, but the 75th Road is just a zoo with cars. Okay. And if you're going to double the number of kids going there, I think you're doubling the number of parking spaces. That doesn't show up in the design at all. And so I'm very concerned about that. That's my list. Okay.
Thank you very much for sharing with us.
And last thing, I don't feel that you invited us here. Grayling over here invited us here. I know that you made us at this time available for us to speak, but I didn't get a notice. No one's told us about this. And I go back to that communications. If you sent something out, maybe someone got it, but I'd like to know what was sent out. Thank you.
And Gordon Young.
I'm Gordon Young. I live on 134th, just next to the west side of the property. I've been there for 39 years. I have a couple of questions. One, why are you taking all the trees out behind my lot only and not showing any of them out behind any other lots? They're thinned out, of course, but the one lot is completely barren behind it. You've been a good neighbor for all the time we've been there. Now you're going to become a bad neighbor, creating kind of a negative feeling toward the board for several reasons. Secondly, I'd like to comment on the design of this building. It looks like it's an architect's building designed for architects' use, not for children's use or for maintenance. You've got an awfully lot of extra wall space, and you're going to have to pay for that. You're going to have to pay for it in construction, in maintenance, in heating and cooling. And so it doesn't look like a cost-effective design. My history comes from a school that I went to in 1936, and it is still in use today. It's a square-built brick school in the Seattle district. Also, a number of other schools that I've attended are similar to that. And I just don't understand why you're tearing down a facility that is under student and is not, and I don't know if anybody's ever done a cost study about improving the school or adding onto it versus completely building a new one. I would suspect that an improvement on there and perhaps adding some space in there might be more cost effective. You're also losing a small funding source in the not having an auditorium there. People are using it and paying for it today. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have Bill McKenzie.
Yeah, my name is Bill McKenzie, and my wife and I live on Avondale, which is quite a bit removed from Rose Hills Junior High. We had the pleasure of being on the Rose Hills campus just this past Saturday, and that's when we found out about what was going on. I've been an active voter for 51 years, and in 51 years I've never missed an election, and in 51 years I have always voted for school bonds and for school improvements. And when the ballot came out, I believe the election day is officially tomorrow. Our ballots went back the day after we received them. It said schools, and we said yes. It was my impression that that money was going for schools, for teachers' salaries, for textbooks, for chem labs, for all of the things that are necessary. And I get over on Saturday afternoon, I went to my granddaughter's basketball game, and I find out that a virtually brand new school is being torn down and being rebuilt at an exorbitant amount of money. When I say a brand new school, I understand that it's, less than 40 years old. To my way of thinking, I look at a brand new school as the one we started in 52. That's when they built new schools. And then why do you take and bus children from Redmond Ridge to Rose Hill as opposed to taking this money and giving the youngsters in Redmond Ridge their own school? Or take the money and put it into education, not into construction. You've got a perfect building over there. It's absolutely beautiful. It's magnificent. The area around it that's being torn out, I can't understand that. To my way of thinking as a voter and a taxpayer, it's fiscal irresponsibility on the part of the school board and a part of the district, and I would like to see something done about it. I would like to see you retain the existing building, do something for the youngsters on Redmond Ridge, and don't tear down a perfectly good building and do away with part of the facilities and then also take away from the ecostructure. If that's the way it's going to continue, I'll probably change my mind and I'll vote against school bonds. But I look at school bonds as a part of education. It's a part of what makes our youngsters and gives them the education they need. And I was looking for that money to go into the classroom.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kimball, would you like to respond?
I'd love to respond. Thank you, all of you, for coming. Just because there was, I think, a couple of comments about what this time is about. Once a month, the board has an opportunity to hear from public citizens on anything that is on their mind, and they are given that 3-minute period just to make sure that we have plenty of time for citizens. So you're always welcome to do that, and I know the board welcomes those comments, as do I. There were lots of issues that were raised, so I want to clarify a few things, and I just have to get the one out there. Of course, it is ludicrous that we would be busing people from Redmond Ridge to Rose Hill Junior High School, and we are not doing that. It's not in the plans now. It is not in the plans in the future. And wherever that information came from, it's just wrong. It is not happening, and that is not in the design. As a matter of fact, I received this flyer that many of you were referring to or looking at, and there is lots of information here that is misinformed. So I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 things. I'm going to start with process of how we go about making decisions about building. I'm going to talk a little bit about the overcrowding that's going on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the information that's in here, and then I'm going to point you to some resources of how you can get involved and get good information so that we're dealing with the facts. What is most productive for us is when we debate and discuss the real information and what we're struggling with as a school system and how to solve those problems. What is counterproductive is when we have information that isn't correct and it's rumor and based upon things that aren't factual. That's where we get ourselves into trouble. So I want to clarify as much as we possibly can. In 1997, as Ms. Gentry, is that how I say it? Is that correct? As indicated, we asked our community to give us some input on what we should do about our aging facilities in the system. And in that time, the voters approved a bond in 1998 that said that we would systematically look at all of our buildings in the system, and over a 40-year period of time, we would upgrade those facilities so that they were current, they would serve the educational needs of our students for the future, and that we would modernize those facilities. And at that time, we asked our citizens, should we do the most basic infrastructure upgrades? Should we do something that that does the systems but doesn't address the educational program, or should we do everything including the educational program needs? And our voters said, do the thing that does the educational program needs as well as the systems issues. And in 1998, we did 11 buildings over 8 years, and in many of those cases, the building was torn down as opposed to modernizing that core. Now, the question is, why would you do that? So what we do is we bring in outside expertise and we ask for an estimate. And we ask them to tell us how much it would cost to gut the building and fix all those systems and address the educational needs of the future versus building a new building. If the costs are 80% of what it would cost to build a new building, then we build new instead of modernizing the existing building. There's actually a state formula that's involved in this, and the state says if it's more than 40%, but we think that threshold is way too low. It's actually 80% is the number that we use before we would do a new in lieu. And keep in mind that often what's happening when we're doing new in lieu is if you modernize the building that kids are in, we have to find a place for those students for that year to 2 years while that construction is taking place. So that has cost involved. So we look at the scope of the whole thing. And we evaluate every project, and we have outside auditors, as was described, evaluate our price modeling. So we don't just have one person who may have a vested interest in that. We have multiple people give us those estimates in order to make sure that those estimates are right on the money. I ask our team frequently, because I, like you, have concerns about making sure that the dollars that the taxpayers have entrusted us with are being used well. In 2006, after doing 11 buildings, we asked the community the same question, which said, do you want to continue, go into phase 2 of this program? This was a 4-phase program over a period of up to 40 years to do the buildings inside the system. Do you want to do phase 2? And do you want, the same question was asked, the basics, the moderate, or the educational programs as well. And again, the voters said, continue doing what you're doing, we like what you're doing, and we think that up-to-date facilities are appropriate for the learning inside of our system. And during that 2006 bond that was passed by our voters, Rose Hill Junior High School was in the scope of that bond. We typically do 1 high school in a phase of work, 1 or 2 junior high schools in a phase of work, and a handful of elementary schools. And again, every site is evaluated for, do we go in and gut the building, or do we go ahead and tear down the building and build a new building, depending upon the cost, the scope, what the needs are, and the size. So we did that work for Rose Hill Junior High School. And the evaluation came back, and it was actually going to cost us more money to gut the building and house the kids and then put them back than it was to tear down the building and build another one on the other part of the piece of property while the kids are in school, and then we flip-flop. So one of the questions then is, all right, I'm a neighbor, I'm a community member, where is the process, where is my time for input as it relates to this? Because there are both legal requirements as it relates to input, and we care about input. And those input sessions are yet to come. They have not happened with the exception of one, and I'll talk about the one. So the bond was passed in 2006, and this project was scoped to start the work around 2010 to be completed around 2013. So that's the time frame. And I have a Gantt chart with the scope, so just I'll let you know what I'm reading from. In 2010, we do site investigation, educational programming, and so what that means is that we start asking the question, do we do new and lieu? What is the educational program needs? How many kids do we need to house it for? And we look at all the demographics in the district. So the overcrowding that you've referred to in the system, we have pockets of overcrowding in the district. And the levy that you've voted on indeed was a capital levy to deal with the overcrowding problem. We had a levy a year ago that dealt with the education component of our system. We care deeply about the education. That is our first priority, and we think that having good functional facilities helps contribute to the education programming. The levy that is being voted on right now by our citizens is about dealing with overcrowding. Here's how the overcrowding problem has shown itself. This last fall, we had 600 more kiddos show up than did a year ago. And next year, we're anticipating 400 more, and the next year, 400 more, and we're anticipating that for 5 years. So over the next 5 years, we're going to have over 2,500 more students than we had a year ago. That overcrowding happens in pockets in the district. So Redmond Ridge is one area, and the Einstein area on that part of Redmond is another area. We also have some fill-in growth in Kirkland, and what we're trying to do is make sure that the kids are where the spots are. So we've done a few things. One thing that we've done is we moved the Bell Elementary School to feed into Juanita instead of feeding into Lake Washington High School. We've had Audubon feed into Lake Washington High School instead of feeding into Redmond High. So we did a shift from east to west. Now, that is not busing kids from Redmond Ridge to Rose Hill Junior. All we've done is simply move those students who were going from Redmond Junior to Redmond High, the Audubon students, now to Rose Hill Junior and Lake Washington High. And by the way, 15 years ago, that's exactly where they were going. When we built East Lake High School, we shifted the feeder pattern from west to east because we had more capacity on the east side of the district. So that's a school that unfortunately has now been shifted twice in the last 20 years because of building capacity as population grows. So we did that. We also are moving to a 9-12 school system programmatically because we think that's what's good for kids as we prepare them for college, but also it allowed us to use up some space. There's space in our high schools right now that isn't being used, and we're out of room in the elementary schools. By going K-5, the 6th graders then go up to middle school, and 9th graders go up to high school. So the pressure at the elementary level, which would require us to build 5 elementary schools in the next 4 years, that actually gets reduced. But what we do need to do is build an expansion at Eastlake and Redmond High School and build another secondary school on the east side of the district in order to deal with those kids that are coming up through the system. So that's how we're dealing with overcrowding, and we needed to understand that misconception. Rose Hill Junior High School is going to be a full school because of these shifts and because of how we're using the population, and also because of the kids that we see in the elementary system today that are going to be feeding into Rose Hill Junior High School. We follow those trends in population for years out. Also, we do have a choice school that's at Rose Hill Junior High, Stella Scola, and that also takes up some space on that site. Currently, they're in portables, and we'll be incorporating them into the building, which is important for that program. It's a very successful program for our district. So back to schedule. So 2010, from the spring into the fall, we got a modernization team together. We invited some community members to join that team. We had 4 parents who are community members join that team, along with some staff and some administrators. And they began debating what the building should look like. The schematic design phase starts in June and goes through about January of this year. The next phase is conditional use permitting, and that actually will be completed this spring. With the conditional use permitting, that is when we start asking for community input, and the city requires us to do that. So the city does not issue a conditional use permit until these public input sessions have taken place. And so the community input phase is from March until June, and that's when that community input is taking place. The land use permit happens after that phase, and then we start doing documentation, construction documents, get building permits, those kinds of things. So we have a schedule where these things take place. Already, the modernization team has been starting to work with neighbors, answer neighbors' questions, certainly address concerns. But that's been on a by-request basis. Somebody calls and says, I have a question about this. I heard a rumor in the neighborhood, and our modernization team will meet with neighbors who are interested in hearing where we are in the process, and then, of course, can take part in the public input process as that gets executed, which, again, begins in March and will go through June. As it relates to the project itself, again, I mentioned that there are some misconceptions in this document, and I'd like to address a few of those misconceptions and then give all of you the opportunity to touch bases with the people who are in charge of this project, who are in the room tonight, and I'm going to connect you personally and then give you the opportunity to do that and then get back to us as this takes place. A decision has been made to do new in lieu. We put the new building on a different part of the property for the reasons that I described. It is cost effective. It gives us the opportunity to provide educational programming for our kids for the future. People worry about, so what's going to happen to the topography of the property? What about the snow hill? What about trees, et cetera? The city requires us to maintain 35% of the trees on the piece of property. We are going to maintain 50% of the trees that exist today, and we'll be doing plantings of additional trees because, as you know, anytime you do some new construction, there's some disruption to the property that takes place, and we'll need to make sure that we deal with that. It is not our desire in any way, shape, or form to impact significantly the buffer that many of the neighbors have to the school property. Of course, if the school is moved, of course, there's going to be a difference, but we want to maintain those buffers as appropriate. The markings on the trees, the red paint on the trees, that does not mean those trees are being removed. What we had is we had an arborist come in, evaluate the conditions of the trees. Those trees that were dead or had been damaged as a result of recent storms were removed. The rest of the trees that were marked by an arborist, saying this is this kind of tree, and they were tagged. Doesn't mean that they are going to be removed. So it's easy, if I'm a neighbor, I'm trying to think about what it would be like if I were in your shoes. You see red paint on trees, and most people say, oh my gosh, they're going to remove that tree. Totally get that. Well, that's not really what the red paint was for, and so there's a misconception that's floating in the neighborhood. What we do have is we do have maps currently today, and again, after the meeting, I'm going to have our facilities folks show you this maps of what trees are planned on being retained, and we have them marked in retained trees, and trees where removal will be taking place, and new plantings of trees today. So you have access to that today. These, of course, are being in process, and so it's because we haven't had the public input process yet, you would not have seen these advertised and driven, but that certainly is part of the process that we go through. And we talk about buffers, and we talk about privacy, and we talk about access, and those are the things that are talked about during that process. Even as much as the Snow Hill, there was something that came up as it relates to the Snow Hill, and I'm trying to get to the note here. Here we go. Snow Hill. Bottom of the sledding hill, here it is. At the request of the City of Redmond Design Review Board, because the City of Redmond has been looking at these, part of the hillside used by our community for sledding is being preserved in the current plans, because we know that's an attractive part of that piece of property for kids in the neighborhood. So, I certainly want to make sure that the misconceptions that are in this document are clarified. We are not busing kids. We are not tearing down all of the trees. We are not spending money that should be spent on the classroom on construction. Those funds, construction versus money that goes into classrooms, they are two separate funds, and they cannot mix legally or practically or ethically. There's a money that's voted on for construction, and there's a money that's voted on for educational programs, and it is against the law for us to mix those two funds. The money that is being used for this project was funded on bonds that were voted in 2006, and I can't take that money and put it into something else. That's what it was voted in order to use. We care about trees, we care about buffers, we care about privacy, we also care about the safety of kids. We also are interested in working with the community on trying to make sure that this is a successful project. There was a couple of mentions of the theater. The theater as it currently designed isn't in scope for this project because it's not in scope for any of our junior high schools. What is true, however, is that if you look at some of the more recent projects, we do have a really functional multi-purpose room that can be used for many of the activities that the theaters currently used for. So I'd challenge you to look at the design and ask some questions. The people who are going to give you the best factual data is Forrest Miller, who is our Director of Facilities. He is here, and he also has with him the project manager, who Mike Romero, and Mike is working specifically on that project, and they can answer all the questions that you have about the project as it sits today, where the input processes are, and how we will mitigate some of these issues. I can assure you that we care very deeply about being a good neighbor, which was mentioned. It will be different. We're moving the school to a different location. But we think it's going to be a great asset for the community. If you look at some of the things that we have done in some of our other projects, and you talk to the neighbors in those projects, and we've done a lot now. I mean, we've done 15 projects over a 10-year period of time. The neighbors are pretty pleased with what it brings to the neighborhood, what it brings to the community, and having a high-quality facility that impacts the desirability of the neighborhood. It impacts positively property values. It impacts the community pride. There are a lot of things that we're hoping that this project will bring to the table. Forrest and Mike, you'll be available outside the door to talk to any of these folks right after we're done here. So.
And I just would like to echo with the community involvement with the 15 schools that we have done, and knowing at every building we have had, and rightfully so, people who live right next door or nearby with questions and sometimes issues about things that are going on. And I can say from a board's perspective that I've been very pleased with the response that they have gotten with the teams that they've worked with. They've been able to share them. Oftentimes we come to some kind of an agreement between them to make it the best situation for the neighbors as well as for the school. So please know that these folks will listen to you, and do make sure that you, when you've got questions, that you go to the source and get them clarified and answered for you, and get the correct answers, because I know you all want to know the real thing that's going to be happening in your backyard or your next door situation. Nancy, did you want to say something?
And this is in my area, and this all took me quite by surprise tonight. As you all were going through your list, I'm going, whoa, what? We know that those things weren't happening that way, and so it's interesting how rumors get started. I just wanted to speak real briefly. You said that there's no architectural designs finished yet, are there?
No, the schematic is done, so where the building would sit.
How we would lay it out.
No architecturals have been done, that's correct.
Right, and the schematic is based on the land, what's available, the topography, what can we do keeping kids on site safely while the new building goes up, where can the fields go, where can the parking go after that. And it's also based on something we call an ed spec, which the state requires and the district does, and that lays out for what would have been a junior high and now will be a middle school, what are the things educationally that we want in our buildings, in our communities. So that schematic tends to address what it would take to do those things. And we will have areas that will always, within our hours be open to the public, and then, classroom areas that won't be open. The other thing, and we hear this here and we've heard it on other situations, is why are we tearing down these buildings? I can't think of Rose Hill as a new school, although I guess if you think of it in terms of those beautiful old buildings that people used to build, it seems pretty young. But we don't have any of those beautiful old buildings in our district. What we have is a lot of buildings that were put up fast and furious in the post-World War II baby boom, which are a nightmare to heat, a nightmare to maintain, and as this evaluation showed, aren't worth remodeling. And I know that's hard when you think in terms of the age of the building, but that's what we've been dealing with a lot in this district. Our new way of building buildings now, not only to meet our educational needs, but we have our sustainability parameters. We want buildings that will be more energy efficient, will have better indoor air quality, will have better lighting. There's a whole lot of things, and our facilities people can explain some of that, but they don't look like the old buildings. They are not square boxes or rectangular boxes anymore. It's just not the way we do education, because we want kids to be able to have classroom groupings and shared space and a lot of other things. So when we first started the modernization program, which was right after, or just after I got on the board, there was a lot of eyebrows raised. But our schools have done really, really well. And I do want to say, too, that where we could modernize, in a few cases, we have modernized. Doesn't always work out quite the way you'd hope. Sometimes those are the projects that tend to do cost overrides. Our district has an excellent reputation in terms of not doing cost overrides. We have stayed within our budgets for each of these projects, both in the modernization and the new buildings that we've had to build to accommodate growth on the east side. So,
Doug or Chris, anything?
Well, as the junior member of the board, I would simply let you know that when you're running for school board, you're running for education. I mean, fundamentally, I'm here for math and science, and I let my colleagues deal with liberal arts. But when you arrive here, you rapidly realize that it's not just about math and science, unfortunately. And you start delving into all these details, and it's an incredible crash course. And I will tell you that as someone who, as of 2.5 or 3 years ago when I got elected, had no background whatsoever. I don't do construction. I work in buildings. They stand up. I'm happy. I have asked enough questions and seen enough information through the district, through the administration, to believe them when they say that this is the most cost-effective measure available. That maintenance, I mean, right now, things like the pool at Juanita High School, I look at that and it's like, how many millions of dollars would we have to pour down that pool to keep it functioning? Building a new pool would have been cheaper, but we don't have the money for new pools. It is an important part of what we do to try and keep the administration, to keep the oversight on these budgets. And I can't tell you that I'm an expert, but I can tell you that to the extent I have been able to learn about this process, that I do believe that this is in our best interest, both educationally and in a fiscal sense, of being good stewards of your tax dollars. I think that's it. Oh, by the way, sorry, I care about math and science, but ecology falls in my department. And I am actually a bit of a closet tree hugger, so I am going to ask the team to give us an update on, trees. Exactly, trees. How are we protecting the ones that are sticking around? And to be perfectly honest, if I was a neighbor and I saw a whole bunch of markings, I think you're exactly right. I would panic. You want to do that. So if there's any way we can work it into the system to actually have someone go through and say, okay, well, here are the proposed trees that we are talking about taking out, and marking those so that people can see what's on the proposals before they're actually final, that would be appreciated.
I just have to say, I didn't run for school board for buildings either. Math and science is why I ran. But it happens to be my day job. So I work with schools all over the state, and I see construction projects from all over the state, but from a health and safety perspective. But two of us are tree people, and we do firmly believe in really good barriers and buffers, and of reasonable buffers of smart choices.
Doug?
Well, I don't think you want to hear any more blathering on by school board members, but just for your information, I live in the eastern part of the district, and when I first got on the board 21 years ago, we only had basically one school on the Sammamish Plateau, and so I've got a number of battle scars from the siting of elementary schools, high schools, and junior highs over the years. And so I do appreciate some of the concerns that you have. The new high school, for us, new high school, East Lake High School, abutted the subdivision where I live. And so we went through that firsthand as far as the concern about how that building was sited on the property, what kind of buffers were provided, what kind of traffic control. So I know firsthand concerns that you have, and all I can say is, and I can echo it, but I think our staff is attuned to that. I think they will answer your questions. They'll provide you with sources of further information. So I think you can be confident. I mean, you may not agree with the final decisions that are made, but I think you can be confident that you will have the information that you want. And I know that everyone here, sitting up here on the dais, will make sure that you do get all the information that you need.
And Forrest and Mike, you'll be out in the lobby or down the hall out here, okay? And so if those of you who are here from Rose Hill, we appreciate very much you bringing your concerns, and please know that they're not taken lightly. It is important as a school district to be good neighbors, and we work very hard, and the board will make sure that the district does work very hard to keep that good neighbor feeling between us and you all. So if you want to follow them, they'll be glad to talk with you, provide you any other information you need, and let you know more about what the public process will be in the next few months. So thank you very much. Okay. Our consent agenda? I'll entertain a motion for our consent agenda to be approved.
Move approval. I'll do second.
Okay. Doug moved, Nancy second. Chip, would you pull the board, please?
Chris?
Did you really?
Yes. Nancy?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes?
Doug?
Yes.
I'd also like to point out under tab number 6, we have $17,356 worth of donations, $5,060 donation from Thoreau to Thoreau Elementary for outdoor education stipends and student council stipends, $1,096 from the Einstein PTSA to Einstein Elementary to purchase SRA reading labs, $7,920 from the McAuliffe PTSA to McAuliffe Elementary for stipends for their outdoor ed program. Looks like people are ramping up for outdoor ed.
In that time of year.
$1,980 from the Dickinson PTSA to Dickinson Elementary for stipends for their ASB Math Club and Explorations in Math. And then a $1,300 donation from the Wilder PTSA to Wilder Elementary for their teacher enrichment payment for their choir program. Again, for a total of $17,356. I think there is a typo, Diane, in the Thoreau one. I don't think we're actually getting a donation from HD Thoreau.
No, probably their PTSA.
Probably their PTSA. So those are the donations this month.
And always much appreciated with our community. Talk about partnerships and good neighbors.
Yep. I did also want to note, and I know you saw this in your consent agenda, that we did under tab number 3, our Lake Washington Education Association, who represent our teachers, did vote to extend the contract, which of course you've just now approved. And I think that it is good wisdom on part of both our school board, who approved this, as well as our association, who worked with our teachers to approve this. You know, in a time where our state is looking to try and cut $5 billion in the next biennium, for our teachers to step back and say, you know, we understand, and we don't think it's in anyone's best interest to negotiate a contract right now in this environment. So I just want to applaud both our Teachers Association as well as our board for taking that leadership in that area.
Also, there are just minor tweaks, and parents will be seeing this posted on the website in the calendar. Is that not correct, Catherine? The new calendars will be going out after today. They're just minor tweaks, and they have to do with conferencing.
Yes.
Because of the conferencing changes. But
yeah, and the spring break schedule will come out as well, which gets pushed out to 2013, 14, I think. Yes.
Yeah, we go back into April for spring break, starting next year and the following school year. So important. Maybe our PTA folks can get the message out too, to have parents and PTA start spreading the word that the next 2-year calendar, if they're going to start planning their vacation for next year, to look at the calendar. They're just some minor changes.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Next, Jackie, we have a few items in our non-consent agenda. First reading of EL number 2, which is emergency CEO succession. And again, just to remind the public how we do this, our ELs, or executive limitations, are the parameters under which the board has me operate. And it's essentially guidelines under which the board sets expectations operationally on what you'd like accomplished inside the system. And I report throughout the year on areas that are outlined in those policies, and areas of interest where you think that there needs to be improvement sought. We identify those on an annual basis, and then I report back to you what we've done and how we're doing. In some instances, the ELs are very short, and in other cases, they're lengthy discussion. The agreement we've had is that we only discuss those things that are in partial compliance or that the board has identified as an interest of having a discussion on. So the first one is EL2, emergency CEO succession. This one is in full compliance, and so there's really nothing new there, except for I did want to note that because we now have a system of 2 deputy superintendents, that should I get hit by a bus,
Please bite your tongue.
okay, Janine Fogard, who is Deputy Superintendent in charge of operations, would be the liaison to the board, and Tracy Pierce, who's the Deputy Superintendent in charge of instructional services, would continue to be the liaison to the organization on the instructional side. So your go-to person would be Janine in this instance, but I did want to note that change.
And I think for the public, just to know that we do have things in place to make sure that all is taken care of as we need to have it taken care of.
The second one is annual report to the public, and that one is also in full compliance, and you've had an opportunity to review that one.
Could I just do a plug for, since it's on our website, the 2009-10 annual report, that people can see the very full document that it is. They did not receive it in their mail this year, but it is available, and it's got lots of good information. So folks should go to the website and they can find the full report. They have received a mailing, and the mailing has been a summary, and they'll be getting another one in the springtime. But if you want to know the full report and see our annual report, it is on our website for everyone to see. And thank you to Catherine and her department for all the work on that.
Great. The last EL is EL7, and this EL is related to our instructional program. And this one, we do have some areas that are in partial compliance. And again, I want to remind the board around the arrow methodology, that if the arrows are sideways, that means it's been no change from the previous year. If the arrows are up, that means it's gone improved, and if the arrows are down, that means it has declined in status. So we did, and my typical protocols that we go over the ones that are in partial compliance. We did have some improvements in a few areas, and those have been noted in the notebook. EL 7.2 is in partial compliance because we don't have K-6 Visual Arts, 7-12 Performing Arts, or Spanish alignment guides completed until 2013. You will notice in that EL that we have things on a schedule. So this is really about a scheduling issue more than anything else. EL 7.3 is in partial compliance. Again, because of our assessment strategy has not been fully implemented yet. We started doing some significant development during the 10-11 school year, and as you know, we did a delay in that this last month, and I know that Chris sent me an email about that, about asking about that, a little bit deeper look at that. Mm-hmm. What we are trying to do with that delay is to try and do a better job of integrating and trying to do a better job of managing workload. And it was interesting because I want to relate this particular one because I think this is important for the board to contemplate. We're talking about this legislatively. I had a call with the K-12 Education Committee in the Senate last week. And the way I described this to Senator McAuliffe, who was hosting that call, was that the legislature keeps adopting and putting in place legislation that in and of itself is productive and the right thing to do. But when you put it on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, the cumulative impact of that legislation becomes overwhelming to the system. And what will happen is you'll have an interested group say, we would really, the latest one was very interested, we're really worried about human trafficking. And it came down as a reg from OSPI that we want schools to now begin educating the system around human trafficking. And human trafficking is an important issue. However, when you now require us to do something about human trafficking, and on top of what we're doing around AIDS education, on top of what we're doing around environmental education, on top of what we're doing around making sure kids are safe, and on top of, again, the system becomes overwhelmed. We have the same problem when we're doing initiatives inside the system. So in this case, elementary teachers this year, for example, we're dealing with a brand new math curriculum that they have not seen a new curriculum in over a decade. They're dealing with a social studies curriculum that they got last year. They're dealing with a new grade book that is now electronic, which means they're trying to figure that new system, and deal with the communication with parents. And on top of that, they're dealing with a new conferencing schedule. And then we laid on them 12 new assessments that they needed to do this year. Well, it's no wonder that the system blew up a little bit on us. And it didn't really blow up. What we got was we have some really good tools and mechanism of communicating within the system, of saying, you guys just need to know the stress inside of our system right now is palpable. People can feel it. And so we said, we've got to do this smarter. We've got to step back and figure out, how can we integrate these things so that we're not creating this enormous stress inside the system, but still get after our outcomes? Because the note that Chris shared was, we need to be thoughtful about it, but we can't back away from the outcome, which is good data about kids, good tools to improve learning, and accountability in the system. And they're all important. And so we agree with that, and we're working towards that. So that's the nature of this one. And the assessment agenda is a tough one. It's a tough nut to crack, and we're continuing to weave our way around. The non-negotiable from my perspective is we've got to have good data. And we can't have good data if we don't have good assessments, and our team is working on that. So I wanted to give a little bit more story behind that one in particular.
And I'm just putting it on my little list of retreat topics. I think it might be one that would be a good update for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of the reason I asked is that I rather enjoy being immersed in the K-6 space, the assessment of DIBELS. I understand it. I can see it in progress. It actually helps us know where things are at.
Yep.
As we're implementing a new math curriculum, I don't want to accidentally leave behind the assessment that I think needs to be part of this game.
Agreed. Agreed. And I do agree 100%. And we will have this as a retreat topic, because I think it's a really important one. The other thing that's going on in the assessment world that's interesting, and maybe Doug will address this a little bit when he talks about the legislative agenda, is there's great debate going on right now at the state level around assessments, into course assessments, backing off or not on graduation requirements as it relates to assessments. How does this line up with the national core standards and what's happening at the national level around assessments? So there is going to be enormous amounts of energy and dialogue around assessments in the years to come, and we don't want to lose the momentum around things like mathematics and science. 7.4 is in partial compliance, primarily because we're limited in resources around how do we provide supplemental services for every kid that needs to improve. We have some safety net services, but we do not have adequate safety net services in order to serve all of those students. And again, we are working on developing a comprehensive assessment system to more clearly identify those students through our data warehouse, and that is coming. As you know, we've talked about this a number of times. 7.5 is in partial compliance, and this is the one, let me get to it in my notebook
Favorite
here.
PE one.
Yes, this is the famous one where we know that the law says that we need to provide PE, 100 minutes of PE, and we do 60. Every district in the state breaks the law. The law has remained the same, and we continue to break the law because there's not enough minutes in order to actually do it adequately.
So, sorry, I did actually want to ask one question around this. Yeah. At the junior high and high school levels, is there still a PE requirement, or is that something that kids are meeting outside of the educational day? No, there is a PE requirement, a credit requirement in junior high school and high school. So this is an elementary not meeting the EL.
We have, interestingly enough, had quite a bit of conversation of late, especially based upon our last conversation with the board around graduation requirements, around PE waivers and equivalency.
Right.
And at the retreat, we're going to spend some time talking some more about that. And there is a distinction between waiver and equivalency, and the practice that we have been talking about that's been going on in the system, and where we are going to be going in the system. And that's some of the work that both junior high school and high school principals are doing right now to have those conversations. The next one that is in partial compliance, the last one, is 7.6. And 7.6 reads that we shall implement a program of instruction that includes academic standards, curriculum, and a program of assessment. And this one is around addressing the needs of all kids through developing their talents and interests, by addressing different learning styles, and by doing innovative and experimental programs. This is in partial compliance, again, because of safety net, the ability to provide safety net programs primarily. We also have difficulty in dealing with the issue of having enough classes for students who want to have different talents and interests. This is this elective issue. So these are all things that are due primarily to financial constraints. They're not due to programmatic issues, but they are due to what we can do financially. And we hope that in the future we'll be able to deal with this, but in our current economic development environment, we think that we're going to have to continue doing the best we can with what we got.
Any
questions on
other
EL 7?
questions for Chip?
I made a note. One, congratulations on page 15, I guess it is, up at the top. I mean, there was a slight increase, and your note says a significant difference in terms of instructional programs actively addressing the needs of all students. And I know we've worked really hard on that, so it looks like there's some movement there.
Yes.
On 16, special ed, it looks like that increase of 5% seems, well, we keep seeing special ed preschool enrollment going up. Do we have a good reason for that? Better identification or what?
I'm going to take a swag at this and then see if Tracy has any additional insights. Part of this is that we are, I think through Child Find and through some of our preschool services, actually identifying more students for special education sooner. So that's causing our numbers to go up. We, I think, do a pretty good job if you look at our numbers of transitioning students who are receiving services out of special education throughout the system. I think we actually do a pretty good job of that. But our numbers, net numbers, are getting larger. If you look at how do we look from a state perspective? So the general rule of thumb is about 12% overall of your population is special education population, and we usually hover in the 11 to 11.5 range. So we have typically not gone over that threshold of 12%. Tracy, do you have anything additional to add, or is that kind of it? Okay.
So this increase for preschool numbers, that's not necessarily what we're seeing in the rest of the K-12 system?
Is that true, Tracy, or do we know?
Can you repeat the question?
Well, there's this, from 2004 through 2009, each year we've gone up in terms of the number of preschoolers identified as special ed.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of K-12, have our special ed numbers increased accordingly or been, I thought maybe they had gone down for some reason.
No, I think, and maybe I'm not understanding the question, but the top chart is actually P21, so the preschool numbers are included in the top chart on
Oh,
page
it's
16.
Oh, you're right.
Mhm.
P21.
Yeah, so that includes it reflects the increase in preschool, because,
That's what I thought
Yeah.
originally, because I know I sat at home and did the math on this to see what our percentage was. So then I just got thrown off. So,
You know what, why don't I get a report back to the board on, I think
Break it out
I think
a little
that both Tracy and I trying to answer this in a vacuum might be a bit of a stretch. So why don't we get Paul to respond to this, what he sees as some of the indicators is, because, for example, we're up in population as well.
right.
So,
But we're not, since 2004, we've just started to go up. I mean, this is a
trend.
This is a trend. And yet, my understanding was, and maybe we have the data to address this, that the interventions that we've been doing in the last decade, and in particular with some of the 728 monies, I thought we're moving more kids out of special ed earlier than this would reflect.
Yeah, I believe that is true, but again, why don't I come back to the board, since this will go into the consent agenda next time, why don't I do a board report
Just board
on that?
report's fine.
Because I think that's a good question to ask.
Yeah, it'd be kind of nice to see it broke out a little
Yep.
bit, how much of that is preschool versus elementary versus secondary.
Yeah, and I did,
Trends.
Robbie did send a question as well, specifically around ELL and learning and achievement gap. And I, in light of the fact that he's not here, I will also provide a written brief for the board on that as well. I think there's some distinctions around ELL. That is different than special ed because it's a service that we provide and we eventually move kids out of that. So ELL is not an achievement gap issue. It's a learning acquisition issue.
Yeah.
I mean, a language acquisition issue. So I'll try and kind of write a summary of that for you as well, and then bring that back before we put this in the consent as well.
And Barb Billinghurst had shared some information with Janine and I that was some work that was done on looking at ELL in the state. Did you get to see that?
I have not looked at that
I'll
yet.
send it to you.
Okay,
See,
thank you.
I don't know if it'll help you at all, but
Okay.
And I also had
others are asking the same questions that
Yep.
we've been.
I have a question about safety net. And in that case, if we're looking at trends, if you compare 2004, 2005 with 2009-10, you can see we've gone to, well, actually, if you compare it to 2008 and 9, we've grown by over 800. And that's kind of one of those, glass half full, half empty. In other words, it's probably good that we're, serving more kids, but the question is
Why?
Why?
Yeah, and it is interesting because if you look at 2004 to 2007, we increase, and then from 7 to 9-10, we actually stabilize and then start decreasing again. And so I'll see if we can get a little bit of explanation for those trends.
I hope that's not because our money is disappearing in the pots for that.
Well, those are the kind of things that would be good to know.
Could be, but I'll find out for us.
Any other questions for Chip on any of the EL7s? Okay, then get back to my agenda here. Superintendent's report, do you have anything for us today?
I only wanted to clarify that we did have a gentleman tonight speak to the capital levy that is on the ballot that voters are considering. And again, simply wanted to, for the record, indicate that capital levy that voters are considering right now is to deal specifically with facilities as allowed under the law. We're not allowed to use that money for anything but dealing with our facility issues. And it is intended to build some additional space at Eastlake High School, Redmond High School, and a secondary school on the east side of the district that would be focused on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it will deal with our overcrowding issue. We will find out hopefully tomorrow night, if not a few days afterwards, what the outcome of that levy will be. If that levy is positive, then we will intend on working fast and furiously in order to build those spaces so that in the fall of 2012, when we make the school configuration shift, we'll have the housing to house those students. If the levy is to the contrary and it's negative and we do not pass it with 50%, then the board and I will need to begin doing a series of community outreach and input around what we're going to do. Do we double shift, which is a real possibility? Do we reallocate money from the modernization program? Do we begin massive busing of students? In that instance, this little Rose Hill conversation might actually come true, which would, of course, would be a problem. So those would be some of the options if indeed it doesn't pass. So we'll know that tomorrow night.
And as of 8 o'clock this evening, 28.97% of the ballots that were mailed have been returned. So we have 28,712 ballots in out of 99,000 that were sent out.
And with a levy, unlike a bond, we don't have a validation
Correct.
requirement.
That's correct.
And King County was guessing that we would be about 34%. So tomorrow will be the big day since it's midnight postmark, 8 o'clock if you're dropping off at a box.
So can I make it over 50% plus one? Is there a minimum number of votes that are?
No.
No, that's the validation
Yeah,
thing.
not for, not for
Like April 15th, I don't know very many post offices that are going to be open till midnight. In fact, I don't think any of them are.
well, as
They
I
don't even
said,
stay open till
they
8.
have to be postmarked by then. So if
They have to be in a post office box by whenever their last pickup is.
correct,
Or
in order to be
they won't
correct.
get postmarked.
If we look historically, just if you like to play the math game, Chris.
Really?
We're just about right now.
Historically, we tend to increase the yes vote between 2.2 and 2.7% after the first night. So if we are at 50 or 51 or 52, we generally say we've won this thing. If we're at 48 or 49%, then we hold our breath, but it's not lost. So that's if we're at 46, then we start panicking and we begin thinking about what we're going to do with these thousands of students that we have in our system.
So the first batch of count, which is everything they have up to probably till tomorrow, will be usually is announced about 8:15 online, 8:15, 8:30. That time. And since it's the only thing on and there are only about a handful of other things on, I would imagine it'd be closer to 8:15 that we'll see something.
Yeah. The last part, just of the superintendent's report, and I'm not going to steal the thunder from Doug, is that the legislature is working fast and furious from everything from the practical, like how are we going to pay for schools, to the absurd, like doing an opt-in policy for AIDS and health education instead of an opt-out policy for AIDS and health education.
Which we've had for years and years and
Which
years
we've had for years
and
and
works
years and
just
years.
fine.
And that the implications, of course, of that bill are that we would have to manage 24,000 signatures every year. Rather than, manage the few handful of kids that opt out.
I heard about that one today. It really doesn't have a chance, does it?
Well, you would hope not,
Or no.
but we did have a significant change in the legislature.
I know, it's a nightmare to administer, and we've been having to do AIDS education for decades.
Right.
It's not
right.
like this is new.
Right,
Yeah,
and
this
there's a number of bills out there that are related to some substantive changes. I did send you all a website this last week around this group that has a pretty specific agenda that has lots of energy behind it.
Yes, they do.
And there's pros and cons to some of the things that they're advocating, and so I would expect that we may want to talk about a few of those items at the retreat when we have some time.
You lost me for a minute there. Which group?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
In my what?
It's in board briefs.
Yeah.
It's got a name, and it's
I
League of
can't-
Education Voters is part of it, and
Yeah,
Stand
I
for
can't-
Children is also part of it. So
Yeah, I
it's
can't recall
it's
the
a
name.
conglomerate.
Now Coalition?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. The
But yeah, consult
Excellent
the-
Schools Now Coalition.
yes.
Your email. Okay.
I'm
You're
done.
done, okay. And I think what Chip raised reminds us again that you should probably, if you have any interest in the legislative battle right now, you should consult with your WASDA website, our state association website, and the school administrators website for the special reports and for what they call the two, which is their weekly report on what's happening in the legislature.
Can I just throw one more in? And if you go to the Washington State PTA website,
Yeah.
you can go in there and become part of their, it's their advocacy section, and you can get a grassroots connection, and you
yeah.
can sign on to get emails from what they're doing and bills and things that they're following as well. And she is doing an excellent report as well on activity that's occurring in a very timely fashion.
So yeah, if you cover those three sites, you're going to pretty much have some of the best information you can have without being there. Just real quickly, tonight I talk about procedural thing and several other themes. February 4th, all bills have to be adopted by their original House Policy Committee by the 21st of this month. So you're beginning to see a little bit more movement in the legislature. I'm not going to say that it's necessarily solving anything or useful movement, but there is a lot of, there's less in the hearing mode and more in the action mode because they need to meet that self-imposed February 21st date. And then there's a fiscal date of February 25th, rather, to implement bills that are related to the budget. But as we all know, there's a caveat that any legislation necessary to implement the budget is exempt, and one can be creative as to how that is applied to a piece of legislation.
So, can't do anything when you're in the legislature.
And then as far as some other kind of highlights, the Senate passed the supplemental budget 38-9 on Friday. So that's moving ahead. It should be on the governor's desk this week. That's the plan. And we talked about some of the cuts that will be made to K-12 in that. Also, so now the focus shifts to the 2011-2013 biennial budget and how you fill the $4.6 billion shortfall that they're looking at right now. Hopefully later in March, when we actually get the next fiscal forecast, we'll know whether that's shrinking or whether it's getting further apart. And after that, you'll start seeing more movement towards getting that biennial budget put together. There was a hearing on the governor's plan to create a Department of Education. That has created a lot of sound and fury. I know that our association testified on it, one of our vice presidents testified. It basically, at least is currently written, because they only had, I think, 8 hours notice to see the actual content. It does eliminate WASDA, and it does eliminate the State Board of Education. It replaces the State Board of Education with the governor-appointed advisory committee, essentially. So if you want to find out more information about that, I would urge you to look at Senate Bill 5639, I believe, is the number of that legislation. I think Senator Tom introduced it, but I'm not sure who else is on there. But I'd urge you to take a close look at that one. Only other thing, the other thing is to watch what's happening with the capital budget. There's some concern, and that's the 2011-2013. There's a real concern as to whether there'll be any money in that at all. So take a look at that one, track that one. And finally, as Chip mentioned, the House has really spending a lot of time debating both the graduation requirements and whether there'll be efforts to roll back the requirements to have some of the whole issue of assessments and how to stage those, whether keep whether to defer others and that sort of thing. So nothing's really come out of that, but there's a lot of debate right now on assessments and graduation requirements, particularly in the House.
We can only hope that they will die in their committees and not make it to the floor on many of these.
Right.
That's when we start worrying. And the thing is it's fast and furious once they hit the floor and where they go. So, okay. Anything? Oh, doom and gloom.
That's enough.
Yeah, it is. Doom and gloom. Any future agenda items? Continued, if you will. We're meeting this week to start talking about retreat agenda, so if I could get anything else that you might have that you want. I've got some from Doug, and I've written a few notes to myself, and Robbie sent me some, so if you've got some things, please send me. Board follow-up, if you could, in briefs, just update us on information that you get from the facilities team on the meeting that they're having with Rose Hill Junior High, so community, so we kind of know how that's going.
Yep.
Any other follow-up things that board members need? Not debrief. Okay, any other comments from board members on anything that's going on?
I had one thing I just wanted to share with you guys. In the Kirkland Courier, they had a political cartoon. Vocal parents who run down the school board, lots of people yelling at us, and then they had the vocal parents who run for school board, and it's empty. And as far as I can tell, there has never been anybody elected to a school board who wasn't a vocal parent. So I think they got this one wrong, and I was going to put together a gentle and humorous rebuttal to their statement here on our behalf. So
I frankly enjoy watching you draw the cartoon as the rebuttal for their.
Well,
I failed that part of my liberal arts education.
I know, that's why I thought it'd be interesting.
My cartoon wouldn't be up to anywhere close to this quality.
I was wondering what triggered that, although we certainly have a lot of people vocal, more so than normal. I mean,
yes,
it has been an interesting election.
You know, it's interesting. I've reflected a little bit with Jackie on this, is that it has been an interesting election, and we have never had to work so hard for so little money. That said,
You'll say something about that with regard to the Battle of Britain.
Yes. That said, I also think that the public discourse, we have been under the wire for a long time around the public discourse. And I think that the public discourse, when done up front and honestly with good information, is healthy. We just got to figure out ways to engage our public in more meaningful ways. And, you know, we've got some work to do, in my mind, in that arena, because there's just too much misinformation out there. And
it's a complex issue for folks. I mean, we heard it this evening in the misconceptions that when you're voting for things for schools that it all goes to education, and it does, but it's not all directed to the classroom, and when it's facilities or technology. And I mean, it's just a complicated
Well,
issue.
it is, but we've never had to deal with so much misinformation.
Yes.
It's that old saying, you're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And there has been a great deal of misinformation. Hey, I'm just quoting. I can't remember where it came from.
Hey, Wendy, show
Barbara will be happy to
was a
know
good statement.
that when I saw this and read the letters to the editor in this edition, I started writing my currents article, and it will be on facilities and modernization, and I'll hope to get some help from Catherine and maybe even Forrest, because I have this really abysmal habit of forgetting what certain things are called, even though I've been doing this for so long. And I do have a facilities perspective a little bit different than normal because of my work. But, you know, as I was telling Matt, we have never done so much education around things, and that part's good. But we've also never had such an uphill battle to get facts. And admittedly, I've had a really horrendous 2 weeks, and I am just getting to my board briefs, or I would have been a little more prepared for Rose Hill. But it's still it's just mind-boggling, the rumors that get out there.
Yeah.
And and I think we need to do this not only, and I'm thinking my Currents article could also be an op-ed piece, but it is making me worried about our future bond measures.
Yeah, and as it relates to our future, the thing that I do worry about our future bond measures, and the thing that is deepest in my heart, so I'll make this an emotional cry, is our folks at Juanita High School. We have got to do everything we can in 2014 to make sure that we are building a new Juanita High School for that community. It is just not right for us to have a disparity in facilities the way we do, and that's going to be a tough fight, and we're going to have to fight that fight.
Well, I'm going to go with my glass half full here, and reminding folks, if you count the articles that have been written and how many have been negative, they are not near as many as the positives this time. And I
mean the letters to the editor.
The letters to the editor, and letters on blogs, and the comments wherever they might appear in print, online, or in the written form. And in past years, we've had fewer letters positive that we've been able to get people to write and submit. We're lucky to get 1 or 2 per paper, and that was it for our big bonds in that. So I don't think the negative is really as big out there of population. Certainly there are people there that are concerned and have issues, but I'm not sure that I would say that it was a huge piece. I'll know more tomorrow. Talk to me after 8:15 tomorrow.
Well, my non-scientific poll, and it wasn't really a poll, but at the Super Bowl party I attended this weekend, I didn't get, people know who I am and they can bend my ear, and nobody's, I had my button on and nobody was saying, what are you guys trying to do,
Well, that's the thing with the
so
Rose Hill thing.
I take that
That's
as a good harbinger. But I was just going to add that, being kind of the bottom of the food chain in terms of government hierarchy, we're dealing with the Tea Party and all the fallout from all that kind of debate and discussion and angst. And so, it does require that we become more proactive, but that's the environment we're in. It's a very, a distrustful situation.
But remember the levies in November, in the midst of all of that, when it was really in front of everybody, passed. The local levies passed, even though a lot of other things that had to do with money. And it comes down to people knowing their community. We're right there, being the low on the bottom feeders of the government hierarchy. We still are the closest to the community, and it's something that they invest in and they trust and they see. And that's the piece that we have to help them understand better, that we are good stewards of their money and how it's used, and explain to them where it comes from and why we do the things that we do.
I also like to say that the reason why 2 board members can send a letter to the editor and 4 or 5 board members cannot are state laws, and we do not break state laws. So therefore, seeing a letter from 2 board members should not...
Unless it's PE requirements.
Whom? Oh, sorry.
We did take
And just because, if you don't mind,
Yes.
when we step back from all of this, this is about creating a future for our kids. This is about standard of living. This is about quality of life. And if we don't invest in our schools, there will be a downward spiral in this community that will be bad for everybody.
Yes, it will indeed. It will indeed. Okay, our next meeting is February 28th, which will be at 5 p.m., and then we will have our work session will be at 5. I know what I'm reading about. Monday, the 28th.
Well, it was wrong somewhere. I assume the work session...
This is...
We're treating the last board meeting in February as a first board meeting.
We are.
Work session at 5 and board meeting at 7.
Following board retreat, we don't have a board meeting.
On that following Monday.
I talked to Janine about that.
Oh.
We're treating February 28th as the first board meeting and follow.
Because, yes, so we won't have a meeting right after the retreat.
Right, I understand
which
that.
you don't like. And this will be the board meeting at 5:30.
Right.
I looked it up.
No, that's being changed too, but the May, what did we just do to the March one? Well, it doesn't matter.
Well, we didn't necessarily
We'll leave
change the
this as
March
is.
one, but you might.
I didn't catch it, or I would have known it, and I wouldn't have been sitting here like I was an idiot, which is not uncommon. Okay, all right. Our next board meeting is February 28th at 5 p.m. We will have a work session with a board meeting at 7, which will have a public comment opportunity. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?